All right, we are live, and on today's episode, I interview a doctor of chiropractor based in Denver, Colorado, who teaches people how to move and to heal. He's also a RYT 500 yoga teacher, anatomy training leader, US PTA tennis pro, physio, and dry needling practitioner. Welcome to the Winner Circle, Jason Rogers.
Oh, thank you. Thanks for having me. Yeah, looking forward to this.
Yeah, absolutely. It's been a couple years since we last connected, but you're a perfect guest for these conversations where I'm interviewing people that have stepped outside like the traditional world to really pursue their passion, and you're doing it in so many areas of your life. I'm excited to delve into your hero's journey and what brought you here.
Yeah, it's definitely been a journey, and any inspiration or things that my journey can provide, especially like mistakes I've made where you can go ahead and skip those and not go through that, very willing to give that advice to people.
And we'll get there. We'll get to the challenges and the things you've overcome. But before that, let's keep it really positive and light with the first question. And that is, Jason, right here, right now, what do you love about your personal world?
I've always really liked to do have things on my own terms, and that's what being a business owner does. It puts everything on you, but for me, that's a good way. I feel like it's extremely empowering to create your own finances, to decide how your life is going to be lived, where you're going to spend your time, what you're going to focus on, who you're going to focus on. And I like that I am the designer of everything because then if there's any complaints, I just come back to me because I'm doing all the designing anyway. So it makes room. It's like a little self-improvement project as having a business as well.
Important with having a business and with all the different roles you play is knowing your mission. So, what is your personal mission that guides you, I mean, all your various businesses and endeavors?
I think something I'm really passionate about is educating people on health, on fitness, on their bodies, on things we should have been taught in school, but we weren't because, to be honest, the information's too valuable and it teaches us to lean on ourselves for empowerment as instead of other things. So my mission would probably be to help people move and heal better, just like on the bio. But what that means to me is I teach you how to listen to your body better. I help you interpret the signals of what your body's saying, whether they be pains or gut feelings. We work on the emotional component with yoga, meditation, um, and really trying to get people to own their own power. I mean,
Mhm.
almost everything that you care about, mood wise, perception wise, is under your control. So if you can eat a little better, if you can move a little more, if you can do a couple exercises that facilitate your brain and body working better together, then your life is going to be better. And I see it as like a cascade of healing where people come in and they don't move well and they don't feel good because they can't move well and we get them to move well, all of a sudden they feel like walking more, they feel like exercising more. This helps their mood. This helps them get a partner. This helps them ask for a raise or get a better job or want to switch something in their life because they feel good enough to do so. So that's what I try to focus on.
Beautiful. So when was this passion like birthed and how has it evolved?
Oh man, mine came through pain, physical pain more than anything. Um, I've never met anyone that had a worse diet than me growing up. And I just didn't eat any vegetables. Teddy Grahams, bagel bites, Red Baron pizzas, an Oreo milkshake every night before bed. Like these were my habits. And so trying to change up the habits was very difficult. And I ended up hurting myself and lifting when I was 22 and got a C5, C6 disc injury, and it left me in pain in every position all the time with no relieving for like 3.5 years. And it changed me as a person. It made me like a harder person, made me more angsty, more anxious. And finally, in grad school, after learning about nutrition, I decided to give up milk and bread. And 2 weeks later, I had my first pain-free moment in 3.5 years. And it eventually became, my state. I've had a lot of different injuries, including Achilles tear, labrum tear, meniscus surgeries, broken bones, torn ligaments, all this stuff. But it was all to basically do research for my future patients. Very rarely does somebody come in with something and that I haven't had personal experience getting over. Um, so my journey really started with realizing that I was supposed to teach people about this, and that the things that were happening to me were my studies and not things that weren't supposed to happen or things that were terrible. As long as you endure and you don't give up, then life will turn around.
Uh-huh. So how did all these injuries happen?
I have a, fairly rare genetic marker in my blood that, if you've heard of Ehlers-Danlos, it's a skin condition where your skin is very, um, your collagen, the things that make up your skin and your connective tissue, is made up of something else than most people. So it makes me very stretchy. So like my pinky can bend back all the way. Like my skin is extremely stretchy, like just being able to pull it. So this makes me hypermobile. And
Uh,
I received a lot of injuries dancing, walking, not in competitive sports like you would think, but just being too loose. And so trying to and figuring out that I had that condition, and the only thing that I've seen work for it across the board is lifting and stabilizing with strength. So I've become very passionate about that. But that finding that out and getting tested genetically for that and seeing that that was a thing was a big thing, because that gave me something like a direction to go after.
mhm, mhm. It's kind of a side question here, and we'll get to it eventually, but I just want to ask it now. It's about your hypermobility and how it relates to yoga. You're also a yoga teacher, and there's a lot of people, as am I. There's a lot of people that you see that are hypermobile, and it kind of they seem like really flexy and bendy, but they're just kind of like dumping their weight into their joints, and it can lead to energy, and they're not building that strength. So yeah, how did you learn as someone who is hypermobile to implement that into your practice and not like rely on that hypermobility as part of your yoga practice because it can be a huge detriment.
Yeah, I mean, yoga is great, but just like anything, if used incorrectly or if it's the only tool you use, it's not that effective. Um, the hypermobile people are drawn to yoga because they're better at it. They're aesthetically better
Yeah.
at it. So if you have ex ballet dancers, if you've got ex gymnasts, young people, people that are already a little more mobile tend to be drawn to yoga. And so the challenge is, like, when you see Instagram, when you see these yoga poses in books or these famous yogis doing this stuff, you're like, oh, well, that must be the goal. I must need to get into that position. And so these hypermobile people don't necessarily have the background or the strength or the joint mobility to hold those positions in safe ways, but because they're hypermobile and have a tendency toward that, they go for those positions. And that does show up a lot in my practice. We have to convince people to stay away from, I call it the 80% rule. Don't lift more than 80%, don't stretch more than 80% of your max. And we do that for several weeks, trying to just stabilize them. Um, but a lot of my yoga teaching is a lot of very cue heavy stuff to keep hypermobility out of it. And there are a lot of different yoga poses that encourage hypermobility in a really poor way. One of the best things you can do if you're just a yogi listening to this is, and by just a yogi, I mean your exercise is just yoga, is using some resistance bands and just squeezing your back body together, because there's very little pulling in yoga. And we have so much phone time, so much screen time, so much computer time, so much car time, and all that drags us forward, that if we don't get some sort of back body integration, then it's not going to be good news long term for our spines. They see the same thing in jiu-jitsu. You're in that balled up position. If you ball up in like this, and then you're also working like that, you're going to be a balled up person. So trying to fight that with yoga is a good thing, but opening up the chest and shoulders, trying to create distance from the neck and the shoulders is one of the ways that I would try to use yoga a little bit more. And then staying away from trying to be 100% on your ranges of motion, trying for that 80% rule if you're somebody that leans toward hypermobility. And almost everyone who is hypermobile knows that they are as well.
Yeah. And so what are the dangers for hypermobile mobile people to go like physiological dangers of like yeah dumping into their joints, going that 100% without the support? Can you explain that like as a doctor of chiropractic and like with your educational background?
Yeah, so it's about what your body feels safe doing. So, for instance, if right now you stretched out your leg, you could stretch out each leg straight. But then when your body's asked to do a split, all of a sudden you can't stretch out your legs both straight. Now, why is that? It's because the body has determined that you are not safe in that position. Your joints are not safe, your muscular health isn't safe in that far stretched out position, and the body doesn't have control. So what you're looking for is the range of motion that you have control over. And you can extend that, but I mean, trying to go into the splits every single time in yoga will probably lead to more back pain because it's putting you in a position to stretch out things that aren't meant to be stretched out that much. Now, if you're hypermobile, you have to be even more careful with this, and you have to add tension into the joint. Passive range of motion is totally different than active range of motion. So if your passive range of motion is extremely mobile, you've got to work on your active range of motion at lower percentages of that mobility and strengthen it. Now, if you start off at 50%, let's say you're doing a half splits. So you have your leg out in front, you got the other knee bent, you're leaning over that leg, you feel a stretch in your hamstring, pushing your heel down, flexing your toes towards your face is an active way to turn on that muscle and stretch it in an active position. This is going to shorten your range of motion, which is good because you're strengthening in a range of motion that you control. Now, then you can distance that out over time and that becomes safe. But if you just do the most that you can with your body as far as mobility goes, you're more than likely going to injure a joint. You're more than likely going to tweak a muscle because the muscular health of the active alignment doesn't line up with the passive alignment, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, that absolutely makes sense. Okay, so let's kind of like rewind back to where we were. You were eating unhealthy. Um, Then you cut out milk and bread. You made some dietary changes. Around kind of around that same time, you had like a lot of injuries, including like a C5 and C6 injury to your spine. Um, did that lead you to like getting help from a chiropractor, and then you were inspired by that and wanted to become one yourself? Like, how did you end up becoming a doctor or chiropractor?
I ended up becoming a chiropractor because my best friend since I was 12 years old became a chiropractor. We went to middle school, high school, undergrad, and then when he graduated, he went to chiro school. I took a break off to play poker professionally. And I called him up one day and was like, how's chiro school going? He's like, oh, it's good. You should come down. And I always enjoyed movement and learning, and school was always fun for me. So decided to go down there, but it wasn't like a burning need. It was just luck. And I'm so lucky that I received that education because it doesn't matter. And I've seen this in so many people. Money doesn't matter if your health is bad. It doesn't matter how many billions of dollars you have in the bank if your neck hurts all the time. If you can't do the things that you love with your body, then it doesn't matter. So to be in a position where I'm able to learn these things and how to take care of my body and like the people that I love's bodies was just blind luck. And
Uh,
yeah, I wish it was a better story.
well, how long have you been a chiropractor now?
I've been a chiropractor for 12 years now. And I immediately started when I moved to Austin with my practice on my own. Um, and I had a successful practice in Austin for 10 years. I just decided that I didn't want to live there forever. So I had to move that, but just restarting in Denver and things are going really well. Yeah.
So upon graduating from your chiropractor school, chiropractic school, you moved to Austin to start your business. Is that correct?
Yeah, pretty much immediately. And I had torn Achilles in the first 2 years. I had like relationships come and go. I tore my meniscus again and had to have surgery. I had less than $1,000 in my bank account for the first 3 years I was there. It was definitely scrounging out a living, but like I tell everybody who has a business, um, 60% of small businesses fail after 5 years, 80% before 10 years. And so the only way to do this is to never give up. You can't start a small business and be like, oh, I'll see how it goes. It's like, no, it has to be part of you. You wouldn't give up on yourself, so you can't give up on your business. And that's how it went for me. I eventually found my niche in the yoga community of Austin, and I'll be forever grateful to them for not only business stuff, but opening up my heart and making me more of an emotional person in that environment. And yeah.
Yeah, so when did yoga come into the journey? Did you start working with yogis or did you become a yoga teacher practicing yoga? Yeah, when did yoga come into your journey and how did it do so?
I started doing yoga when I first moved to Austin. There was Black Swan downtown, the old school location at Orchard,
Yeah.
and it was a new challenging thing for me. And it was the first thing I'd done that was slow. Like my sports were soccer, basketball, tennis, like very little downtime in those sports. And so when I found something that could regulate my breath, it's like all yogis who end up taking their 200 hour. Most of them don't know why they're there other than their body and their nervous system kept saying, this is really good for me. I feel really good after this. And they just wanted to know more and make it part of their life. And that's what happened to me. I was doing yoga twice a day some days, um, just because I just noticed it was so good for my mood, so good for the pains that I was currently feeling. And that eventually led to a 200-hour training in 2016. And a couple years later, I was the official chiropractor of Black Swan with like 5 locations and really just had a uh, a really good referral network through the yoga community. Most of my patients were yogis. And it just kind of happened like that. When I moved to Austin, I thought I was going to be the tennis chiropractor. I didn't do yoga at all. I'd done P90X yoga. That was the extent of my yoga experience. So you never know how life is going to go, but the thing is, you got to embrace what's working, even if it's what you didn't think was going to happen. And that's really what happened with yoga.
And how did your yoga practice and your yoga education complement what you learned in your chiropractic education?
So in chiropractic school, we learn how to regulate the nervous system. Yes, it's important that you don't have aches or pains and that your bones are not out of place, that your muscles are relaxed and things like that. But it's more important that you can sleep and that you can digest and that you can clear inflammation from chronic inflammation sites. And so that's what chiropractic does. Now, in order to heal, you have to be able to sleep. You have to be able to rest. And so yoga is a very restful nervous system experience. So you can actually get into and be better at healing just by doing yoga classes because it calms down your nervous system to a state that is more facilitative to healing. And specifically, the cranial nerve number 10, the vagus nerve, is getting a lot of publicity these days. And that's because of that. The vagus nerve determines whether or not we're in fight or flight. It controls and branches all the way from the neck all the way down to the gut. So it's our brain to gut axis nerve. Um, and that is a really big part of what yoga does, is it modulates that nerve. The chanting, the breathing, the cadence of movement all goes to slowing you down in a life where all of us are looking for that next constant stimuli. The other day I was sitting down and I had my computer game on, I had a TV program on, and I had my phone right beside me. And I'm just like, wow, I'm not present at all. I'm looking at three different screens, and yoga just breaks that. And the more you can break that, the more your nervous system can relax. And that's the only time you can heal. You can't heal in fight or flight. And this is one of the worst things about our society is everyone's in fight or flight and everybody's aching and hurting either mentally, physically, or both. And they just need to slow down. And chiropractic helps you slow down, and yoga helps you slow down. And once I saw that um, symbiotic relationship work really well for me, I really tried to educate people on that and try to get them to add that to their lives.
That's really interesting. Like one of the benefits of yoga asana, the yoga postures, a lot of them could be healing for the spine, I believe. Um, why it is interesting that like most of your clients were yogis. Like, isn't yoga enough? Why do they also need chiropractic care?
The main reason people need chiropractic care is because we don't live like the animal bodies that we inhabit. We live for our brains. And the brain, the body's like, I'm hungry. The body's like, I'm thirsty. The brain's like, I want a Porsche. Like the brain can't be trusted. It's not looking at your base. It's a survival mechanism. Yes, it's how you express your consciousness, but your brain's not you. And you can tell that because sometimes it has thoughts and you're like, that's just a thought. That's not me. So that's something. What was the original question? I'm sorry.
And just curious, like yoga is there's a lot of asanas that are really good for the spine. And I
Oh,
was wondering why, like, how come yogis also need chiropractic care? Because can't they just fix their spine and tend to their nervous system utilizing only yoga?
I think that traditional yoga was created to put you in a meditative space. It wasn't created to be a workout. And now most yoga studios, Core Power with their sculpt, all these heated spots, like it's people that have taken yoga and just been like, all right, now we're going to make it a workout. And that defeats the whole purpose of it, to be honest.
Yeah,
So if you don't walk out of yoga feeling calm and centered, then you didn't yoga. You just did a workout. Now, yeah, there might have been some
yeah,
yoga poses in your workout, but that's not yoga. So when you have, let's say, 100 years ago, zero time spent on screens. Now
yeah,
we average 10 hours a day. There's no evolutionary way that we can adapt to this in 1 to 2 generations. So I think that if you're 100 years ago and you're doing yoga, I think that's all you need to do. I think because of what we do to our bodies, yoga doesn't have sufficient back body strengthening in it consistently to be the only thing that you can do. And that's why I encourage resistance bands. I encourage yogis to go to the gym and do rowing and stuff like that. In addition, if you carry a problem into something like yoga and then you stretch into that asymmetry, you're just going to make that asymmetry worse,
yeah,
especially what you need is stabilization. So there are people that are a little too flexy that have a little something going on and they make it worse by going to yoga by chronically stretching it instead of strengthening it. So we just live in a time where it's a little more complicated because of the poor way that we choose to use our bodies on a daily basis. And that's the main reason that yoga is not enough these days.
yeah. So, for a yogi, doing strength training, which you recommended, which you're really passionate about yourself, you recommend a lot of pulls, right? A lot of pulls, a lot of the back body, because there's not a lot of that in the yoga practice.
And every time you hold a phone, every time you drive a car, every time you hold a mouse, every time you write something, you're activating your front body. But the problem is the body's supposed to be a 3 to 2 strength ratio stronger in the back than the front. This is why your triceps bigger than your bicep. This is why your hamstring is bigger than your quad. This is why your calf is bigger than your tibialis anterior. Everything is bigger in the back because it's supposed to be stronger. But instead, we live in a society that actually flips that to reverse. And since structure determines function, since our structure is off chronically, our function is going to be off chronically, and it's going to get worse and worse as we age. So we have to work on that structure. And there is no way to use screens the way that we do and just have the body go, okay, body, deal with it, adapt without pain, without honestly future surgical intervention for a lot of people. And the only way to do that is to strengthen the back. And so rows is one of the easiest things, pull downs, getting on the row machine, doing some resistance bands, squeezing the shoulder blades together brings blood flow to the back body. And if you're somebody that stretches chronically all the time in their back because it feels so good, you grab a door frame and you stretch out the back. That might feel good in the moment, but if that was actually going to help you, you wouldn't need to do it every day. So what actually helps is when you get that pain in between your shoulder blades to squeeze and bring blood flow to your back body is what your body's asking for 9 out of 10 times when it's hurting back there. But instead, what do? We lean into that computer posture even more, stretching muscles that are supposed to be this length to often double their length for hours and hours a day. And then we wonder why those muscles ache.
Uh-huh. And so is that the primary reason patients are seeing you is because of that forward rounding, whether that be like on their phones, uh, driving on their car, on the computer? Is that what's causing most people's chronic pain and spine problems?
I would say that between weakness in the legs, core, and back, and the positions that we continuously put ourselves in, driving and screen time, those are easily the biggest two factors. And we're weak because we don't move the way we used to. If you sit at a computer all day for work, you might get a great brain workout, but your body needs more.
Yeah, let's get into those weaknesses. So you said weaknesses in the legs, core, and back?
Yes.
Uh,
So basically, when you sit, your core weakens. When you sit, your glutes deteriorate. And when you sit, often sit in a poor position to cater to your brain, which is doing stuff, and not to your body, which is holding you up. So between those three things, it's really difficult for the body to do the right thing. Yeah.
okay, okay. What are some common misconceptions people have about chiropractors?
Um, I think that some people think you have to be hurt to go to a chiropractor, and it's actually a preventative modality. So the best people are kids when they come in, because when you're a kid, you're easy to fix, you're easy to identify bad patterns that are going to be worse in the future. Um, you're easy to talk to about posture. You can actually do something about it. Your clavicle is the last bone to ossify in place, and that's when you're 24. So you have a lot of time to change the way that you're going to be built as an adult. Just learning about things as a kid and getting adjusted. But I would say people thinking that they need to be in pain before they start treatment. That's like waiting to smell smoke out of your car before you take it in. It's like you probably should have taken it in when the warning light came on. So that's the big mistake I see from most people. Another one is like causing strokes, like neck manipulations causing strokes. The CDC itself lists yoga and painting as stroke risks. The chiropractic adjustments are not on there. So just from doing this in yoga, having your arms above your head, painting like this, you are more at risk of a stroke than you are getting an adjustment. So they found
Uh,
that if an adjustment can cause arterial injury, then so could you checking your blind spot in the car. So
uh,
that's another big misconception that people have. They think it's dangerous. There have been bone movers in every civilization throughout all time. It was one of the oldest professions. So chiropractic is also extremely safe. I think on average, definitely over 100,000 people die from medical mistakes. Not like they're doing the right thing, like somebody made a mistake and somebody died because of it. Over 100,000 a year. In chiropractic, I believe we're credited since the year 2000 with like 30 deaths.
uh.
So we're considered unsafe, but the medical system kills hundreds of thousands of people in that time, millions in that time, and it's not questioned. So chiropractic is ridiculously safe when you look at the numbers, and the upside really weighs down any downside. Now, just like anything, there are good and bad doctors, but yeah, I think those would be the biggest misconceptions.
Yeah, and what like caused this misconception? Is it because like chiropractors, is it kind of seen as alternative medicine in comparison to like the the medical system, like a doctor, like a PhD um
Yeah, I
of
mean,
medicine?
there was a lawsuit in 1986 where the Supreme Court made the medical doctor, the medical association stop slandering and libeling the chiropractic association. They were doing it through commercials. They were telling all their patients not to go see chiropractors, and they had no reasons other than we didn't do what they did. And it's not our goal to heal you through medicine. It's our goal to get your body in as best a shape as it can to heal itself. Because if you have a pill and you have your body and you have something wrong and you take away the pill, you're going to get healing. If you take away the body, the pill doesn't do anything. So either way, your body is facilitating all the good things that are happening. So you need to work on your body's ability to heal, regardless of what a condition you have or have been diagnosed with. But, you know, let's take thyroid, for example. Now, like 1 out of 3 women is on thyroid medication. What is going on there? Perhaps if these women were more educated about their bodies and hormones and things like that when they were younger, they would be able to watch out for potential pitfalls and not get into the situation where they need to take a lifelong medication. But, whether you call it a conspiracy or not, the fact is the healthcare system is set up to make money off sick people. It's not set up to make money off people getting better. So most people only go to the doctor when they're sick. And this is another mistake where the medical community has trained people to wait for a problem to occur before they act instead of being preventative. So I think we just see things very differently. And for us, it's about getting the body in as best a shape and the mind as best a shape as we can naturally. And then if there need to be interventions after that, absolutely. I can walk right now because of my meniscus surgery and my Achilles surgery. I had a bad bacterial infections 8 years ago. They gave me antibiotics for it. Could have saved my life. There's a time and a place for things. But at the beginning, you have to try to let your body do as much as possible to heal you, in my
Yeah.
opinion.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. So you talked about how prevention is the best in terms of injury prevention. Is That's seeing the chiropractor before you're injured. Um, Preventative rather than reactionary. How often should someone be seeing a chiropractor? Like, what would you recommend? And of course, I'm sure it's different for every people, but generally, like, what are the recommendations on how often should someone be seeing their chiropractor as a means of preventative action?
Preventative is usually once a week or less. Once a week if you actually have some pain or if you're older. But I mean, it's really a person by person basis. I would say ideally for me, if you're an active person who's had past injuries, if you have to sit on a computer all day, if you know that you have to do things that are poor for your body to make money, to make a living, then you have to take care of it. So I would like to see people anywhere from every 2 weeks to every couple months. And they come in, and whether they're in pain or not, they get checked. We try to nip problems in the bud before they become pain. You come in and I'm like, oh, I'm noticing that you're a little bit twisted through the hips. What have you been doing? Oh, well, I got this new thing in my job where I'm spending more time in the car. Oh, well, let's talk about car posture before this actually turns into pain. Because right now it's just a twist, just a muscular asymmetry. So those are the types of things that chiropractors really help with is making it so you don't end up needing surgery or medical intervention later. Because, I mean, the less drugs you're on, the less surgeries you've had, the better quality and quantity of life you tend to have as you get older. And that's what we all want.
Yeah, absolutely. And there are different types of chiropractors. Like pre-call, I was just talking to you about how like I've been experiencing like issues with my spine from like martial arts, from like jujitsu, always around Muay Thai, getting clinched. And so I've been seeing a chiropractor in the past month, and I've had chiropractors in the past who did like twisting and cracks, whereas this new chiropractor, she has a different method that I haven't used, where she uses like an infuser, like a trigger point gun. What are the different types of chiropractors, and what type of chiropractor do you do?
I
Chiropractic do you
think
do?
that one of the least ideal things about our profession is that if you go to 10 different chiropractors, you're probably going to receive 10 different treatments. And the positive way to look at that is that almost everyone has good things to say about chiropractic. Um, and that's with all those treatments going on. So I can't say that one is better than the other. I can tell you what I like, but the fact is there's millions of people going to chiropractors every year, and they're going to all different types, and they're most of them are getting better, and they're reporting that they move better, they feel better, they heal better. And so to me, it's not that, there's a chiropractic technique called networking, which is similar to Reiki, very energetic. There's a chiropractic technique where you're basically just tapping on the first vertebrae up here. And that having fixing a lot of things throughout the rest of the body. But it really doesn't matter who you go to, it's what your body likes. So if you go to a chiropractor and you don't feel like you just got, you know, really, really tuned up, like you should be feeling like, oh my God, like your nervous system and your body should go, I want some more of this. If that's not how you're feeling, then you need to switch what you're doing. And I think that goes with massage therapists, acupuncturists, anything where you're getting body work, your body should be responding extremely positively to this. It shouldn't be a guess. Oh, I wonder if this is helping. No, like if you have to wonder, you need to try to find another provider. Um, but I'm not here to say what modality is better than the other. I've seen so many different kinds of things help people that I think it's what you're drawn toward and who you're drawn toward. Um, and so, yeah, I mean, that's how I would pick.
Mhm, mhm. You talked about warning signs earlier. What are some warning signs that would like our spine really needs chiropractic help?
Posture, one of the ones, if you can't stand up against a wall and feel like you're standing on there straight with your shoulders and your head back, then you are literally headed towards little old lady, little old man syndrome and getting that hump on your neck. So a lot of people are really shocked when they get on the wall how it feels like they're leaning back. And this means that if you get on a wall and touch your shoulders and your head to the wall and you feel like you're leaning back, that means your brain doesn't understand where it is in space. Can you think of an easier way to get injured than your brain not understanding where your body is in space? Like that is so bad. And so one of the things that is really powerful for people is standing on the wall and then realizing like, oh my gosh, like I feel like I'm leaning back when I'm straight. And that's because your body's so used to slouching that it thinks slouching is straight. It thinks that sitting up straight is leaning back. And this is more people than not have this going on. So I really try to encourage people to look at that as a lack of brain to body communication. And the less your brain and body can communicate effectively, the worse you're going to be off in every single system, including injury.
Uh, is there a point of no return? Like you talked about getting that hump on your back, like old people hunt. Like, does it get to a point where it can't be fixed?
The points where it can't be fixed have more to do with age than anything. If you get in before 40, you can make a lot of positive changes. If you get in before 30, you can heal from most things. If you get in before 20, you can heal almost anything. After that, it's much more difficult, and you're playing a game more of let's not get this worse. Let's get it incrementally better, but make sure that it doesn't continue to deteriorate or at least slow down the deterioration process.
Yeah.
Um, this is just how it is. That's why it's important to not wait for the pain and not wait until you can't even lift up your arm to go see what's wrong with your arm. But the warning signs would be, do you work on a computer? is a huge warning sign, um, bigger than any other one, because you can't be on a screen and in your body at the same time. So if you are absorbed in a screen on your phone, on the TV, or for work on your computer for 10 hours a day, that's 10 hours that you weren't listening to this. And so you've got to set aside time to figure out what this wants. And you also have to realize I'm hurting myself. This is how I got to make my money, make my living on my computer. I have to spend some of that money to preemptively take care of myself so that I don't end up with a lot of terrible pain. And that is, I promise you, in 20 years, there's going to be facilities that are just for people's posture from being on the computer too much. That's how
Uh,
bad it is. It is not something that anyone's body can take without
uh,
intervention. And that is
uh.
going to be proven in the decades to come as we see people who have been glued to the phone since they were 2 years old.
Wow, wow, that's scary. Um, since becoming more involved in chiropractic care this last month, it kind of I kind of found a correlation between something I think philosophy and yoga and chiropractic in the spine. And I don't, maybe you're familiar with this or maybe you're not. And that's like the chakras, the energy systems in our spine. Are you familiar with like the chakra systems and how it relates to the spine? Is that something you have an area of knowledge in that you are able to talk about?
Yeah, so the chakras tend to line up with very big nerve bundles in the body. So if you were to open up a body, dissect a body, and you were to place those chakras centers at where as stickers before you cut open the body, you would cut
Yeah.
open the body and go, wow, there's a lot of nerves here compared to other places. So I think that ancient cultures were able to identify where a lot of action was happening, either blood flow wise, nerve wise, and feeling wise, right? Because your heart can hurt, right? Your gut can hurt. Your so when you talk about chakras, you're talking about energy centers, and energy centers mean to me bundles of nerves. And if those nerves and if the structures around those nerves aren't functioning correctly, then the flow of energy itself up and down the spine, up and down the chakras can't function correctly. So it is the
Uh,
same thing. If you have a low back injury, that can affect your baby toe. You can have tingling in your foot. You can have pain in your knee from a low back injury, and low back might not hurt at all. So if you can facilitate healing throughout the entire spine, throughout all those chakras, then you have better energy flow and function throughout the whole thing. So to me, it's the same thing as the spine, and you'll notice that those energy, those chakras all line up with the spine.
uh-huh. One of the modalities you discussed that's like very important to our health is diet. What are some like fundamentals that you've learned about diet on your personal journey of health and healing?
Carbs are not your enemy. Carbs are a great energy source. Carbs are great for clarity of thought. Now, these are good carbs, not like, like I was eating bagel bites and pizza rolls. Um, but I would say of all things that I wish I would have done differently, I would say protein, getting enough protein. Most people, I think, take in 25% or less of what their body needs to function, much less thrive. And I've noticed in myself the mental acuity and the lack of depression and anxious thoughts have decreased wildly since I've upped my protein intake. And to me, they say to take in, some people say to take in a gram of protein per body weight. That seems like a lot for people, and I don't start people off with that because they just won't do it because it seems like an insurmountable amount. So I like to go with one per gram of skeletal muscle weight. So for me, I'm 185. I have around 100 pounds of skeletal muscle. So my baseline protein, like the least I'll take in, is 100 grams. And I think for a long time, I was below 50 every single day. And that would be a really big thing I would do. Other than that, it's processed foods. If you couldn't get it 100 years ago, you shouldn't be eating it. And if you don't know, if you can't look at something and recognize the ingredients, in a language you understand, if you have to break it down in Latin, what that word might mean, you should not have it. Um, it's not human food, and that's the way to look at it. It doesn't have human ingredients. It doesn't have ingredients that our bodies can break down and use. Now, can we survive on this food? Yes. But that doesn't, I don't know anybody who just wants to survive. So the phrase everything in mediocrity or everything in moderation, um, I think that may have come from the food industry to trick you
Yeah.
into continuously eating these foods because the fact is they've spent billions and maybe trillions of dollars over the last 30, 40 years designing these foods to trick your brain into eating more. And these are baseline instinctual things for your brain. You're not able to fight this thing. This isn't something where I can have my favorite snack beside me and not eat it. You have to
Yeah.
avoid it. You can't have it in the house. You can't buy it at the grocery store. The only way to fight these things is to not have them in your life. It can't be a thing where sometimes you eat it because that sometimes quickly turns into a craving and it's genetically designed to do that to you. So the food industry is really scary as far as all the cigarette companies bought all the food companies. And so they're like, oh, we know how to get people to give us money. Let's get them addicted to everything. Um, so those would be the biggest things. The processed foods, if you eat high fructose corn syrup, you're screwed. Like there's no way you're literally eating something that your body thinks is more pleasurable than like normal sugar times 10 and cocaine times 10. So there's no chance that anything that gives you that feeling that's wrapped in a little wrapper or a Skittle, you're going to be eating that. And that just conditions your brain to be too high at a dopamine response thing. That messes up your hormones. I mean, food is so important. There's absolutely nothing that is more important than food because it's what makes you up. If your muscles are made of flaming hot Cheetos and Oreos, do you think that they're going to function as well as muscles made out of meat and broccoli and veggies? And the answer is no. I mean, it wouldn't make sense for something for you to be built out of trash and to function well versus built out of actual food that we've been eating for hundreds of thousands of years.
Yeah. And so the fundamentals of your diet then would be like healthy meat, I'm assuming. So like grass-fed, pasture-raised meat, healthy eggs, like free-range eggs, veggies, like you said, the broccoli. You mentioned carbs. Like what does your carb intake look like, and what are some other fundamentals of your diet?
I try to get a lot of rice, and if you're not allergic to gluten, I feel like sourdough bread is a really good one. If you can get a good sourdough starter or find a place with like literally European bread, that would be really good. Uh, I eat a lot of Asian food. I think that um, having a bunch of carbs, having some meat, having broth like pho, like those are so good for you. I think quinoa is a complete protein. If you can set aside the time to make some quinoa, it's really good for you. Um, Protein bars, I think, are underutilized. Now, not ones with 10 grams of sugar or more in them, but you have to be able to get your protein goals and to get 100 grams of protein with just food without shakes and without bars is really tough. It really is. So you have to figure out, your protein shake and your bar. If you just eat 20 grams of protein in a shake and 15 grams of protein in a bar, that's 35 right there. If you just add those two things in every single day, I think you would be shocked at how much better you felt, how much better your skin looked. Remember, your nails and your hair are made of protein. So just giving your body a chance to replenish all these necessary symptoms or systems with good protein.
Incredible. What are some other self-care fundamentals? So we've talked about like your diet, we've talked about like your yoga practice, your strength training. What are some other fundamentals that you use to attend to your wellness?
I think the biggest thing for people in today's society is social interaction and social connection. It is so underrated how good that is for you, how good touch is for you. And so many people since COVID are working from home and they're just not interacting with people very much. dancing has been proven to be like 10 times more effective than any medication or intervention for depression. Um, and movement in general. Um, if you have thoughts that are stagnant in you that won't leave, the only way to get them out of there is to move. To sit on the couch and to ruminate about everything is not the way. So I think movement is the key to life, and trying to facilitate the movement that happens inside your body by moving it on the outside is one of the easiest ways to think about it.
Mm, amazing. So much wisdom shared. Thank you for all this. A lot of these learnings and wisdom you shared have been brought to you and taught to you by various mentors, helpers, teachers you met along the path. Of course, the list is like very long, I'm sure, but who have been some of the key mentors and helpers, whether they're people you know personally, or people like you've read about or um, listened to that have made a real impact on who you are as a man? Like, so who were these individuals and what were the primary takeaways learned from them that you've incorporated into who you are?
The first one that jumps out is Michael Singer. He wrote The Untethered Soul, and the Surrender Experiment.
Yeah.
And back in 2017 or 18, I read it for the first time. And The Untethered Soul was the first book to logically explain to me why having a asshole complainy voice in your head was not the move. And once you're able to not constantly berate yourself and not think about, oh, negatively about, oh, I should have done this, life should be this way, I could have done that a while ago. I mean, that's half the battle right there. If you have somebody talking nice to you in your head, a lot of things that people say to themselves, they would never say to another person. It's just the ugliest, meanest stuff that could ever come out of somebody, and you're saying this to yourself. So that was a really big deal for me. Just exploring that book, I give that book away several times a year. And that's why, because it totally broke open that for me and made me start to go down the path of being nicer to myself. And the better your perception is of life and yourself, the better you're going to feel, and the opposite as well. Um, let's see. I think people in your life that tend to take things calmly and tend to take stressful situations in stride, these are people to watch and to try to emulate the way they think about things and the way they do things. There were people in my life, like my best friend, that just tend to have always a clear head on his shoulders and always a positive attitude. And there is such a thing as toxic positivity, but for the most part, I'd rather be toxically positive than toxically negative. And there have been a lot of studies to say that it's not being positive that helps, it's being not negative. So it doesn't mean you have to constantly praise yourself. It just means you have to not constantly berate yourself. Um, so that would be a really good one. Oh man, there's so many books. Um, yeah, those would be the two that really stand out for me as far as just change. And then again, just bringing it back to diet. Like there's people on Instagram, Mark Hyman, he's constantly talking about how good diet is. Joe Dispenza is another one for the just owning your own power over your ability to create your own reality and control your perception of things. He's
Uh,
kind of like the Tony Robbins, except a little more maybe in depth scientifically about how all that works. His books, Becoming Supernatural and You Are the Placebo, are amazing and really help you wrap your brain around how you can control a lot of the variables that are making you happy or sad. So those would be the ones that I would like right now.
Uh-huh. As a business owner, like I feel goal setting is probably something that is important into achieving your success. What have you learned about goal setting and setting goals?
I think that as long as you can be happy with progress is a key. Because if you have, say, I wanted to make $7,000 a month off patients and I make it to 6,700, did I fail? Right? when my previous year I was doing 4,200, but I set this goal of 7,000. So yeah, I think it's about perspective. And as long as you're making progress and you're happy and you are balanced, you have a social life, you have time to rest, you have time for vacation. These are the things that are more important than results to me because they
Yeah.
bring more inner peace. And I know a lot of people with who sold their inner peace for a period of time for money, for status, for whatever, and all of them regret it, and they eventually return back to try to get that peace. So
Yeah.
trying to find things that you love to do. If you don't love your work, it's very hard to be happy. If you wake up in the morning dreading work, and then the next time that you feel good is when you get home from work, how could anyone be happy when they spend 10 hours a day dreading their life? And so change is hard, but if you don't like your job, I would start there. Life is too short and you only get one to hate what you do or who you're around. And I just don't see a way that the psyche can recover from that much time of doing something that it doesn't like and still try to be happy.
Yeah. So what's the first step is recognizing it, and then what? Like you're in a job you don't like. You're only happy once you get home from that job. Like what's the awareness is key, and then what?
Yeah, I mean, you have to say, okay, I mean, what's the way out of this? Either I accept things that I'm not accepting to become happier at my job. I start
Uh,
to look at things differently and start to view my job and the things that come from it in a more positive light. If I can't do that, to me, the only thing to do is to quit your job and to get another one. And that's extremely scary, but I've met most people who do that are extremely empowered individuals who say things like, yeah, now I know I can handle anything, like change is one of the scariest things, and especially giving up financial security. I did those things in the last year and a half, so I'm very aware of what those mean. I moved from Austin and had a very successful chiropractic business that I had to give up, and
yeah.
I gave it up for me, for my happiness, not my financial net worth, but my overall happiness. And I think that more people need to look at life as how can I be as useful to the people that I love as I can? How can I accept love and give love more readily? And how can I do something that lights me up? And I just don't see enough people being lit up by the things that they are working on. Um,
Yeah. Where do you find the courage to make that move? A lot of people get stuck at that crossroads of should, like that you should stay in Austin, you have like a thriving practice, like it's safe there, you're familiar, you know where to go to yoga, you know what gym to use, like you have your circle of friends. They stay on that path of should versus the must. That must is that thing that took you from your safe, known world that you've established for yourself over 10 years in Austin, where you had community, where you had a thriving business, to Denver, where you have to kind of start all over again. Where did you find that courage to like get on that path of must and to follow your heart? And what advice would you have someone in a similar path?
I think it's listening to your body. It's listening to your gut. And again, slowing down is the only way that you're able to do that. If you're constantly on the go and your job keeps you stressed out, you're not going to have the energy, the inner energy to make those changes. So a lot of it is people fear the unknown. But the reality is life goes on no matter what you do. And more than that, most people can always go back. I've seen so many people before I left Austin, move to Austin and come back. And I never thought to them, oh, you're a failure at moving. It's like, no, they went and had a life experience and then they came back. Um, I think that a lot of people have a very scared, short-sighted view of change, when in reality, if you believe in yourself, whether you move to Spain or Oregon or Canada, there's going to be people there to love. There's going to be ways to make money. There's going to be a social scene that you're going to enjoy. Um, but I think a lot of people in yoga, they have this concept, beginner's mind. And like when you play a new sport when you're young, you're not thinking to yourself when you miss a baseball, oh my God, I can't believe I missed. I suck. Like you're learning the game. There's not an expectational factor to determine whether or not you're doing good or happy. People put these expectations on themselves and they say, I can't move. Otherwise, I wouldn't be making this much. I can't move. Otherwise, this person will say this or do this. I can't move because I put so much of myself into this that it would feel like I wasted time. But the ultimate waste of time is being somewhere that you don't want to be, doing something you don't want to do. There's no clearer waste of time on earth than those two things. So, I mean, anybody thinking about a move, anybody thinking about a job change, I encourage change is the best part of life. Change is how you learn. And you learn so much from doing things like moving, from doing things like changing your jobs. You get to meet different people, you get to experience different things. And that's what life is about. And that's how you become a more well-rounded, confident person, is going through change. So just being willing to be uncomfortable and knowing that as long as you don't quit, then things will get better.
I love that. So much shared on this conversation. I really appreciate it, and I thank you for your time. I have a final few questions that ask every guest, and we got to that point. This first of these questions, and maybe you've already covered it, but that is through all the highs and lows that is this hero's journey, that is your life. What do you believe has been the greatest life lesson you've learned on your path that you feel called in this moment to share with me and everyone tuning in?
Acceptance. Um, I think when I left Austin, when I decided to leave Austin, a week later, I got a call from a professional tennis player who had been top 40 in the world, wanting to work with him as his private physio. This is something I'd always dreamed of, but never thought I would be able to do. And that was the universe saying, hey, good job. You got a good job on this path. Now, I've had so many physio jobs fall through, other jobs fall through, injuries, um, not knowing where I was going to move. I took like 8 months off just to figure out life and where I wanted to restart whenever I left Austin. Um, and through all those changes, the constant is accept and then roll with it. If you say, "Oh my God, that was my dream job. Now I can't be happy because that fell through." Well, you just made that up in your head. So you can change it. You can change the parameters of what makes you happy. And whether it be in relationships, with dating, or whether it be business stuff, going up and down at the beginning, just being able to accept things and people the way that they are, and then looking for the good in life in general. But for me, it's 100% acceptance. Acceptance of things I can't control, of people the way that they are, and of things the way that they are, and then continuing to be a positive person on top of that.
Beautiful. That I just like a little side question that was spurred from that response. That 8 months where you just took time off just to figure out what was your next step. Like, what did that 8 months look like? How did you find out? Like, what is that next step? Like, what are the tools you implemented? Like, how did you get to the answer that led you to Denver?
Um, I tend to be a little black and white with my thinking and actions. So in Austin, I tried for several years to change things to be a little happier, and to be functioning a little bit better. And those had not worked for me. Um, so there was really no other choice but to leave. Oh, I'm sorry. What was the question one more time?
So, like, you got to the point where you weren't sure what the next step is, and you took time off to figure out what's that next step. Like, how did you find, like, how did you come to that next step? Like, how did you
Oh yeah, sorry.
find that in your heart to what the next step was when at
Um,
the 8 months prior you didn't know?
I decided that I wanted to change everything in my life to where I could get a perspective on it. And the easiest way to do that was to quit everything. And that meant moving from Austin and quitting my business. And immediately I started to have thoughts that I had never entertained before. Um, I started to realize patterns that I was engaged in that were very poor for me that I just couldn't see when I was in the moment. I ended up traveling overseas. I ended up visiting many friends and stuff. And at one point, I lived on the lake for a couple months and just paddle boarded every morning. And it was just about getting to that thing I told you about earlier, where your nervous system has to be in a state of contentment and ease to be able to heal. And I managed to put myself in that state. And Denver really, it wasn't a decision. It was just all of a sudden, I just knew that was the place that I was supposed to be. And I think that came from clarity of all the other BS not being there. So it was like I was able to cleanse all the energy that was being used in Austin. And then with that cleansed energy, I had energy to spare to bring into parts of my life that I was supposed to be doing. And ever since I moved to Denver, I've never thought about going back to Austin once. And I've been here over a year. So that's a
Wow,
really good feeling.
that's a nice choice that you made for yourself. Final question. We've played with time. We examined your past. We examined your present. Let's go into the future. Let's time travel to many years from now. And we're going to be alongside an 85-year-old Jason Rogers. Who is that 85-year-old man? Where are you? Who are you surrounded by? What is the legacy you left in your 85 years? And what are the predominant feelings in your being?
85, I would hope that I'm still maybe teaching a little tennis out there. Um, Being a mentor to people, either through nutrition or exercise or business growth, um, really kind of like a life coach situation. Um, and just trying to help people. I, That's that's what I was put on earth to do, is to take difficult concepts that from like science that's sometimes convoluted or hard to understand, and to be able to break those down to people so that they can understand it and use it and benefit from it. And that's what all teachers do. And then I'm a yoga teacher, I'm a tennis teacher. So same thing in chiropractic, is just teaching. So maybe being a professor somewhere of like health studies would be another good one. But yeah, I mean, I would hope that I would be content and in not that bad of pain. 85 is getting to where I probably have some aches and pains. Um, but yeah, just traveling would be good. Um, and continuing to on a person to person basis, not on Zoom, like in real life, interacting with people. Because I still think that that is what uh, feeds my soul the most, is like, especially one-on-one interactions where I'm trying to really get down to where this person needs help and how I can help them.
Beautiful. And the primary feelings in your body, you said contentment was one. What are some of the other feelings that you are embodying as that 85-year-old man?
I would just say a lightness of spirit. I hope I'm one of those 85-year-old people that you can't bring anywhere because you don't know what I'm going to say. 'Cause I'm going to be cracking jokes, whether they be appropriate or not.
Uh-huh.
But I think a lightness of spirit is, especially as you age, you learn to not take things so seriously. And part of that is you just been through stuff and you're like, oh, well, this sucks, this thing that happened to me, but it's not as bad as that other thing I got over. So just having a lightness of spirit and appreciating who I'm around and where I'm at.
Amazing. Okay, well, I invite you just to close your eyes for a moment and just really tune in, tap in with the 85-year-old Jason Rogers. get into those feelings of lightness of spirit, of contentment, of deep appreciation. You're still active, you're in not much pain. You've been teaching your whole life, whether that be tennis or exercise, nutrition, chiropractic. You've been mentoring people, you've been helping people. Interaction has been key. Really feel into that, man. And then I'm going to bring us back into the present day. And that 85-year-old Jason, he sends current day Jason a message. What does he share with you? What does he whisper into your ear?
Think just enjoy it more and purposefully make more mistakes.
Mm.
Things that your logical brain says not to do or is afraid of. So not making mistakes purposefully, but I think that sometimes people associate fear with a mistake. Oh, I can't do that because I'm afraid of what might happen. But a lot of our reality is in our head. So I think it would be trying to experience as much as possible.
Wow, that's an invitation for us all. Thank you so much, Jason. This has been such a great conversation where I've learned a lot and I'm excited to share it to the world. And I hope people get as much as I've got out of this conversation and through their listening. For people wanting to connect with you, they could find you online at yogachiro.com, and you're also on Instagram at yogachiro. Anywhere else they could find you, and any last closing words you have?
Yeah, I mean, you can find me in Denver and Austin every now and then. Um, but my closing words are incremental changes um, are the best. And also taking out, instead of adding something like a new workout routine or a new food or a new gym you go to, taking away things is the easiest way to heal. If you take away coffee as often, if you smoke less weed, if you drink less alcohol, if you hang around less with people that aren't on the same life path as you and aren't interested in the same things that you do, taking away stuff is so much of an easier and faster way to progress and heal than adding.
Hell yeah. Thank you so much. Bring it in for a fist bump. Bam. Thank you.
Get you.
Yeah. Take care.
All right.